today's podcast is going to be about one of the most important values that we have, and that's sovereignty, right?
Absolutely.
And my name is Maneka,
I'm Kristopher.
and we have sovereignfree.life. You can go there and see all about us, and also the Scandinavia wilds for you in Scandinavia. We're in our farm here in southern Sweden. And yeah, what is sovereignty then actually? Like, we want to take you on a little journey because some might know a little bit about it, some might not know anything. But sovereignty is really about knowing who you are, knowing your fundamental rights, and also to just walk here on earth in honor and do no harm. That's like the baseline. That's the golden rule, is act in honor, do no harm. And sorry for my voice, guys. I've been on a tour speaking for 10 days. Yeah, I'll do my best today. But we're going to talk a little about that and also give some practical examples, right?
Of course, yeah. I think sovereignty is different for different people. I woke up to sovereignty when I had actually went to bankruptcy many years ago, and I was just amazed how the people who are the debt collectors, how they were hunting you and chasing you, and they seem to have so much power, and they almost overwhelmed you with their their movements and how they acted towards you and towards me at the time. And so I started that, compelled me to start a study of who has what power over who, actually. So that was like my journey into it.
And how do we give away our power, right? A lot of people don't even know that one of the basic laws, the natural laws, is to honor agreements. So what you get in letters, in all of this, is just offers of agreements that you can actually say no to. So, well, anyway, now maybe jumping ahead, I think we need to kind of do it from the start, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, what happens if we just take it back to when you are born, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're born, just to go to the basics, you are just this beautiful baby brought to this world by your mother and your father. Of course, they don't know what system they're in. It's like, when you start to learn natural law, it's about, if you have a chess game, you need to learn the rules, right? And you need to play by the rules. Like your mother and father, they weren't even presented with the rules. They didn't even know the rules of the game. They just trusted, the doctor, the state, all of these people. So what actually happened when you were born, you didn't have, a name or a personal identification number. You weren't, part of a state. You didn't write an agreement with anyone that you would be basically abiding by their rules, right? You were just this natural man or woman, being this little child born into this world. And then what happens, as soon as the mother and the father, so mostly it's the mother that gives the first name of the child, and on one piece of paper, on another piece of paper, the father has to accept that it's the father. It's like the last name comes from the father, right? And what happens is quite scary just from the start, that the mother that writes the child's first name actually is fooled by these rules of the game to write on the paper, when you just write the name there, that you give away your child in a way, that you say, what they say is that the child is dead at sea, is lost. So the mother is actually, this might be shocking for some of you, writes that I'm reporting a crime. I'm reporting that my child is lost at sea. And this is in the wording that is used in these forms. And of course, there's so much more to it, but actually, when you know the words that are being used against you, like notices or just the word child is actually not the correct word. So all of these words that are being used can be used against you. So then what happens when the mother reports that the child is lost at sea? Of course, no one is better to do that than the mother, right? And why do you say lost at sea? I think you have to come in and help me now, because there's background information here. Just for those that don't know. So law actually means land, air, and water. Like that. That's the different legislations that can be used. And in the old times, when you were lost at sea, that was the maritime law.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that is not the real law. So there are different levels of law, and there are different laws that are used to play the game against you and not for you.
Mm.
So what this means when the mother says lost at sea means that the maritime law is used. The law that in the ancient times was used when you were out on a ship, or when you were doing, trading out on the ocean. That's a completely different law, where you do not have the rights that you should have in the real law,
in the natural law.
In the natural law, in the law of the land. So what happens when the mother says lost at sea? The government takes the name that comes from the mother and the name from the father, and they create the name. They create your name. So it's not your mother and father in their world that creates the name. So the state, the corporation of the state, creates your name, and therefore is the owner of you, of your name.
And they also create the trust.
Exactly. And in that process, there's also a trust created in your name. Would you like to say something about that, the trust?
No, basically it's a system that is imposed on top of this natural world, and that's the maritime law. And that's when you see your credit card, for example, is spelled out with capital letters, that's a sign that you are in and playing in the maritime law. And that's not the natural law that is representing the real you. You are just a
dead entity.
Dead entity.
You're considered dead already, in the maritime law.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and there is a trust being created in your name. And basically you are being, in your whole life, you're being traded on the stock markets as cattle with your social security number that is connected to your trust. And
I think we have to describe that a bit more in detail. So this is a real thing, guys. You can actually look up, a number like that is traded on the stock market. So I have a number, you have a number with your personal identification number. I've seen those documents myself. I've seen many people that you can actually get those documents out.
You can see how much you're worth, how much money you have in your trust, etc.
And this might be shocking for some of you, but this is a real thing that is really deceiving, so many people when, you acting like you're running after this squirrel wheel of life, like this wheel of life. And while someone is actually trading your personal identification number on the stock market, making millions and millions just on your name, on your false name. And they can do this because you have no rights, because you're already dead in their system. This would not apply to a living man and woman. And they know that very, 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 very well. So it's deep, deep fraud that is being unveiled. And in our networks, we have all the people that have the evidence, that have the paperwork, that are challenging this. And this is, of course, like scary for those in opposition to that, because, but as Dolores Cahill, that I'm working with, that we're working closely with in the World Freedom Lines, fraud unravels all. So this is very fraudulent. I mean, the mother and father was not informed from the start, right? We are not informed that this is going on. We've never agreed to this. And actually the governments that we believe are taking care of us and that should act in our best interest is actually corporations as well. And what does corporation means? Means dead entity, corporation. So the state is an entity, dead entity. In their world, you are a dead entity, and that's why they can, move you like cattle, like you said, on the stock market. And the governments are not governments in that sense. They are also corporations. They're actually a business. And a business is not allowed to have precedence over living men and women. So this is very important.
Yeah, before the current times, you had like a structure that said like men were always above corporations, but now you have like inverted that corporations are above men, that corporations are governing men and women as it is today. Not living men and women, of course, but so actually it is God, corporations, and men and women today. That's how the structure is.
Because they've made us into corporations too, which is not true. It's the real order is God, creator, light, that we all have within us, right? We all know, when we know we're breathing, living men and women, the law is within us, because we know, just a 5-year-old knows what is right and wrong, right?
Definitely.
It's the ethics, it's the values that lives within us. That's where the law comes from. We need to remember that. It doesn't come from outside anywhere. So that law, which is within us, is always the highest.
Yes.
And then it's actually the postal system that comes after that. So it's God, it's living men and women, it's the postal system, because in the old times that had to work, that had to, it's actually, if you didn't know, it's something called the postmaster generals of the world that have a lot of power still today. They're the ones that can declare sovereign nations, for instance, doing they have a very clear procedures of how to do that. And they, can also, so there are those postmaster generals still today that have that power, but those games, the rules of the game, are not revealed to all of us. So this is what a lot of people are taking the steps to actually knowing these fundamental rules that all these so-called governments, corporate entities has to play by. And that's why we see it in real life. This is not just a fantasy. We see it in real life. Both me and Kristopher has done it. Dolores Cahill, lots of other people in our network, Mark Patelek, Bibi Bacchus, lots of people have actually used these rules to play the game and had amazing effects with them in real life. And that's what we need to bring back to people. When you know these rules and you learn how to play by them, you know your rights, you know your powers, then we can have a massive impact to protect the living men and women out there from being treated like cattle or brought into fraud in different ways.
I think the biggest turning point for every man and woman is to just realize who they are, and just because it is always built into you that you are the highest creation of God, and every corporation is under you. That's the first step. But what needs to change then? Well, it's the way you approach language, of course, because they use language to control us, right? Because everything is like think of it as the world as it is today is just like a big marketplace where you are being drawn into contracts of different kinds all the time. And just a letter, any letter from a government agency is a offer of contract to you. And you can either respond, and you can respond in different ways to this contract. But the way the school system has been, given to us, we have been, trained to just accept everything as fact and just to serve, the governments. So what we need to do is we have to turn the table on the people who are supposedly in power and really start asking questions again. So
and I
that's the
think you
key
need
point.
to share I'm so proud of this amazing real man, amazing sovereign man that I have as husband. I have to say that because, one of the things that actually it went to history in Sweden, I have to say that. It was the first rally that we had in Stockholm on I think it was the 30th or 31st of November, 2020. It was just when the World Freedom Line started. It was in the middle of lockdown. You couldn't meet more than like 5 people in Sweden, like in a crowd. And we had, thousands of people in an amazing rally in Stockholm. And the police were kind of taken by surprise first. I don't think they had any idea that we were doing this. But then they came, like lots and lots of police, and they tried to figure out who was the organizer of the rally. And they also, tried to shut us down, of course, because in their world of policies that are made by the government corporations, this was not allowed according to natural law. And also the Constitution of Sweden, of course, it is always allowed to gather, to use your freedom of speech. You can never move against that. So you want to tell the story?
No, it was just that they threatened to shut the whole thing down, and I think it was like 2,000 people there, and nobody was stepping in and they said if nobody steps up now, they would just shut everything down.
Which means they would bring all the police and arrest people and like break it all
yeah,
up.
so
right?
I went to the police officer in charge, and I was surrounded by 10 or 15 police officers. They do this kind of intimidation tactics to get you out of balance, but I think for me it's kind of built into me. I've done it for so many years, and it's both not in myself, it's not only knowledge. I think it's like a combination of that I've integrated, that even police officers and governmental agencies and entities, they are men and women as well.
Exactly,
because
it's so important.
I think when you start to wake up to this, is that you might start to be even more polarized in your mind, that you think that the government entities that are working in the police force are evil or whatever. And that brings you even further from
That's not
understanding.
natural law.
That's not natural law. It's just understanding the illusion of this. And I think in this particular situation, I can see the person standing inside of me, the man, as a man, nothing else, and just asking him questions that in him is very as natural as it is in me. If you ask the right questions, you will trigger stuff in every man and woman, even if they are lawyers and trained, just to be a robot. You will get a very different response if you ask the question. So I just asked if we didn't have the right to assembly, and if we weren't actually, if they didn't consider us being how would it's called, peaceful at the time. I just started asking him questions and them questions, and also didn't say that I was an organizer, because that's also the way they put you into a box and they charge you, you know. So after a while of conversation with this guy, they just let us go and let us do our thing. But I think the most important lesson is that we just need to observe each other as men and women. And when you do that, the other one feels that. That's key, I think.
It is. And I think also, like, when you ask the questions and you control the conversation, it's you can lead the conversation in the right direction.
Yeah,
right?
you basically, like, we take for granted that every authority figure has authority over you. But when you start to ask that person in power where their authority is, ask them to, to define,
produce the evidence.
Yeah,
also
produce
that
the
they have
evidence.
authority over you.
Yeah, basically produce the evidence of them having authority over you or a group of people. So when you do that, they really need to question, or come up with an answer. So that's very powerful.
It was such a powerful moment. This, I mean, you were standing there with 10 police officers around you, and like you said, it's also like a feeling within you. You could see that you were just in your standing. You were standing there. That's what you say, like you're in your standing in sovereignty. And I think it's also that posture and that kind of knowledge of who you are that I so like really admire in you, that you have in those very challenging moments, that you don't go into your head and, oh my God, what was I going to say now? No, you have it in you, somehow, when you know who you are and you have that posture, and you just speak as there would be anyone that you would meet on the street there standing with you, like, and you ask them very, very much in honor. Like, you see some people that, go into aggression and hate, it's got nothing to do with that. It's completely about keeping the peace, keeping the love, acting in honor, acting with, love and care in everything you do. And that is the respect, that's where you also earn the respect. Never, ever go into aggression, into being not peaceful, Of course, if it's not to protect someone, that you have to protect, that's another thing. But like, always have your standing, right? And actually, I would love to also just to say another moment where I was using this. Remember in Berlin, where we were one New Year's in Berlin, like in the middle of the worst lockdown in Germany, and we were just like, okay, we're men and women, we're going out on the street, just watching the fireworks, like it was any, New Year's Eve in Berlin, with the rest of the Work Freedom Alliance team. And we were just like maybe 30, 40 people walking on the street, going down to the harbor to watch the fireworks. And suddenly we were like surrounded by how many police? It was like, I don't know, many. It was like, we had like police cars pulling up, like black police, like with fully, everything, and German police, like, no joke, guys. This was kind of hardcore, guys, And they even like started to like, what do you say, like wrestle down some other guy in there because he was didn't have his passport with him or whatever. Yeah, they were kind of crazy. And I was standing like on the outer level, and I had this. Actually, I was on the outside first, but I went there because you were in there, and I didn't want to leave him or the others. And he drew me into the circle of police. But all the time I was talking to this policeman, just like a man, just like you were saying, and asking him questions from my heart, saying what I was experiencing at the moment. So if you're experiencing some kind of injury, what you can do is, I'm experiencing this right now, like you're hurting me right now. You can tell them what you're just reflecting. So that's what I did. Like, and I asked him, like, is this what you signed up for? Did you sign up for harassing young women in the middle of the night, just walking on the street? And, I was talking to him like this, asking him questions. And when I came to the point where I said, like,
he started crying, right?
yes, don't reveal it before I come to the point. When I asked him, well, is this the reality that you want your children to grow up in, where you're harassing people just peacefully walking on the street? And then tears were just flooding from his eyes, and he had to walk away. Like he walked away from there. He couldn't do it any longer. He couldn't be that cop. And I was so proud of him. It's like, oh my God, there is actually a heart in there. Of course, there are those psychopath police. I met them. Like in Sweden, I've spotted them. Like I know who they are. But a lot of them, they don't want to be in that position. They signed up to protect people or to do something good.
Mm.
And when you remind them that they are a man, they're not just a RoboCop police,
Mm.
You can actually, something starts to happen. And it was the same. We were in this huge rally on Trafalgar Square with like 40,000 people. It was me and Dolores and lots of other people. It was one of the main events before forming the World Freedom Alliance. Like, and there were people trained by ex-military in the UK by the Guardians 300, and there were all these these veterans out there that were protecting everyone, which was beautiful. But they trained people that were on the front line. I mean, these were brutal police. They were like batons and dogs and the rest of it. Like they were just beating people up, but people stayed in peace, and they kept talking, like, exactly like that. Like, do you really want to injure your brother here? Like, are you, like, people on the front, they were talking to these police, or these men dressed up as police.
There must have been an element of
They are
brainwashing.
men dressed up as police.
There must have been an element of brainwashing in those policemen.
Yeah, of
It was
course.
so brutal.
Yeah. I mean, of course, there is the whole brainwash within a lot of police, I think, to just follow orders and not think for yourself. And like, you're drilled into this mentality. And I think a lot of like peer pressure and lots of harassment and all of that going on there. And a lot of trauma. Like one of our very good friends here in Sweden, Conny Andersson, he is an ex-police, and he's really told us from within what is going on there, at least in Sweden, how like there's so much harassment and so much pressure and so much corruption, within, and also like these men and women within that dress up as police that have been so traumatized also that they just go into fear and they shut off, and this very like shut off mentality that it doesn't do any good. Like if we would be rid of that in this world, these men and women just shutting off and doing awful things to each other. I mean, that's what creates wars, right? That's what creates violations against these natural rights. When we shut off our humanity, like our natural instincts of what is right and wrong, right? And you just see other men and women as something they're not, like something bad or something, they're just the enemy or this and that. That's why we say, like, police, all of you, they're all men and women, they all deserve respect, everyone, we're all a family, actually. And I think in our instinct, if you see like the native people of this world, I've been spent a lot of time with the Sami people. I've been in the South Pacific, in the islands there, in India, in the native tribes there up in the mountains. You see so much generosity, so much love, so much natural care, that I really truly believe that's the natural state, right?
Definitely.
We are all as men and women, and then we have this brainwash. Just look at like Terminator and this and that, and like shut off and follow orders, just shoot everyone. Like that's a cool thing. It's not cool at all. It's going against our natural instincts.
Yes.
Now I'm just babbling, but I hope you really at least getting to the core of it. But I think it is an inner process, right? Where you understand that, wow, no one owns me, because when you also believe that, this corporate state, the rules and the regulations that comes through the states are called policies and procedures. They're not the law. This is very important to understand.
Also, to reconnect with society being a marketplace where you're being given contracts,
offers
of
like,
contracts.
do you want to do this?
So if we look at that, because just listening to this, someone new might think, oh, well, give me some example of how to do it then, because if you get a letter, whatever, from the government, take for example this last pandemic, some of you might had a offer of taking a a shot, and that is like an offer to do so, and the way you accept, it's also very good to look at contract law, for example, how contract law works, and with accepting and stuff like that. It's most of you have probably seen that the government is sending you several letters. Like if you don't respond to one letter, even the corporations do this with invoices and stuff. If you don't answer them within 3 times, something goes into effect. It is when you ignore answering the state 3 times, you're accepting the offer being given to you by by basically non-responding. So that's the same as responding and saying yes if you ignore it, So that's why it's very important if you want to keep something open, and it's very important to respond. And how to respond then is to do, it's called a conditional acceptance, right? And conditional acceptance is because in the marketplace, to accept something is considered the highest you can do. But to do a conditional acceptance is for you to ask them to provide you with safety. So, for example, if you get a offer to take an experimental drug or something, you can accept their offer, but you can in turn send back to them different conditions of your acceptance. For example, you can say, yes, Mr. So-and-so, I am willing to take this medicine if you can provide me with the evidence that this is tested according to every gold standard there is, or that you yourself have taken it, or that if I receive an injury from this medicine, you will pay me X amount of millions or whatever. So
and you're personally responsible, right?
You write it to the person as a personal responsibility to the one sending the letter to you. This is a conditional acceptance that gives you a higher standing, that you just ignore it, or that you fight the sender. So that's basically a conditional acceptance. And I can give you a practical example of this. During COVID, I had contract with a big transportation company that had hundreds of people on their facilities all the time. And we got an email about there being a mask mandate, that we had to wear masks on the facilities. And I did a conditional acceptance this time, asking them to provide the effectiveness of a mask, and also ask them to provide me with, damages if I would have gotten damages from the mask, wearing, so to speak.
In their personal capacity. I mean,
Yeah.
the man that actually wrote this to the employees, right?
Yeah, so they went from being this was force, they were forcing us to do this. So after me sending this letter to them, they changed it after 24 hours. They sent out and they changed it from like a mandate forcing us to a what is it called? The recommendation, like a suggestion. Yeah, they recommended it now, so they
for
changed
everyone.
it.
For
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, so
that
for
worked in
everybody.
this
So
company. It
just
was a huge company in
so
Sweden.
so just me, one person, individual man, sending one question to them changed everything for everybody. So imagine you doing that on your workplace, using these knowledges that you are sovereign human being, you asking questions when something is wrong and you ask them to provide the evidence.
Exactly. And that's the power. If someone is trying, no one can force you to do anything that goes against your values.
And nobody can ever force you to.
You just say no. That's a very powerful thing to do. Just to actually, you have the right to say no.
You can never really legally lose your job over you refusing to take a medicine
or have a medical intervention,
Yeah.
such as wearing a mask. So it's very powerful things. And if you look at Dolores, that I'm working with, Dolores Cahill, I mean, she has stopped all the police checkpoints in Ireland with using these techniques. She has challenged the whole Irish state, for not letting people travel freely, or she's just in that process of doing that. In the World Freedom Alliance, we've also sent out something called letters of notice, where you give a notification to someone that, I think you're doing harm, you should please stop with these things. If you don't do that within this time frame, and after 3 notices, you have admitted your guilt. And actually over 90 countries in the world have received these notices from the World Freedom Alliance. And there were also some that actually where changes took place, where this actually did lead to a change. So it can actually be effective in changing people's situations around the world, which is why we're so passionate about sovereignty.
Yeah, and sovereignty is what we have talked about today. Sovereignty is health sovereignty, economical sovereignty. That's why we are so passionate about this whole topic, and just because people need to take their sovereignty back in their lives,
and also like to look at the sovereign life model that we have. Like, have a look at the webinar that we have, and where we describe, the different steps of sovereignty, how this also fits into being financially sovereign, health sovereign, and like being sovereign on so many levels, not only, these practical levels dealing with like employments and states and, men and women dressed up as police, etc. But there are ways to do this, and there are also ways of declaring yourself as a living man and woman. So a lot of people in our circles, they know the process. We couldn't explain it. You need to kind of sit down. It is a process to go through, but that is something that is spreading also, where you are taking back your name, you're taking back yourself, your individual being a living man and woman. So you can actually declare that I'm not dead at sea, I'm actually a living man and woman. And that creates an understanding in relationship with this corporate entity called the state. So this is called like a live life. You can do a live life claim. There are different ways of doing it, but in basically someone else is witnessing that you are alive, that you are breathing. It's very simple, right? Yes, I'm standing here, I'm breathing, I'm alive. Can someone witness that? And you do it in a certain way. where you have it like confirmed and notarized, or like you can send it through the postal system as well, because that is above, the policies, right? So that is one first step that you can take. And then, of course, there's so much more to it. And we can maybe even, link to, we're working also with Mark Vitalik in Australia. And he has a whole platform called Solutions Empowerment, where you can actually go in there and, pay for getting all access to all his documents, all his education, everything.
It's fantastic.
So we've learned so much from Mark.
Yeah.
There's also in New Earth University that, I've been a part of working with Sasha Stone for many years. There's a lot of information. Also, Bibi Bacchus has a course about retrieving your straw man, she calls it. So I really recommend that as well. And then, of course, go to World Freedom Alliance, listen to Dolores and her talks. She has a talk called Law versus Legal. You can also see it on her Telegram channel and on custodian.com. So there's more information out there if you want to dive into it. But we will definitely, give more value, give more real tools for you here in the podcast, in the Sovereign Free Life Facebook group. And we'll also post this on our homepage, sovereignfree.life. And if you want to have a look at, all the other models we have, like we work on all levels, guys. Like we're not like limiting ourselves anywhere. We're working on all levels to just bring sovereignty, freedom, and, knowledge of who you are, right, in the core. So anything you'd like to end with?
No, we have to get kids.
Yes, there are ways to get your kids out of the system as well. That works. So,
All right.
yeah, more coming up. Thanks
Thank you.
for
Bye-bye.
listening, guys. Best of luck. Bye bye.